everyone, today I'm back with another video after so long, and I've been really excited to talk about climate change these days because I've been reading about it a lot on newspapers and obviously media outlets. Like every time I scroll on Instagram or any other social media page, it's all about El Nino, like the gradual rising waters and and climate getting gradually hotter and hotter. Like every time you open any social media platform, everything you see is about the gradual increase in weather, like the extreme conditions of weather. It's either getting hotter or it's either getting colder. Like it's everything about climate change. Like basically that's everything I see nowadays. So I think my FYP is just full of that because I interact with it a lot. But that's something we really need to talk about, because recently on January 7th the US president had officially withdrew US from IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change. And this obviously affects the foundational frameworks of climate change in global climate science. So, like, imagine telling someone that, oh, the weather is getting hotter. Do you know what's the cause? And the people are going to be like, oh, that's terrible. But nobody's going to think for a moment and, like, stop for a moment and think that, oh, the weather is getting hotter. What can I do to help it? Like, what can I do to prevent climate change, and how can I be the person that makes that change? Like, nobody stops to think that. It's because people clearly lack empathy nowadays. And empathy, like when you're coming from a privileged base, you do not develop it. You only develop it when you realize that there's a real person suffering from such actions and such climate changes, that climate change is a real thing that can affect a real person and their lives. Like imagine coming from a really privileged country, like you're from an European country where the infrastructure is great and the government is great, you're getting everything you need, and the only thing you need to worry about is your monthly air conditioning bill. That's when the weather gets hotter. That's just your only worry about climate change. But when you see people in coastal areas that are really getting badly affected by climate change, you just have to grow the empathy to realize that people in coastal areas lose their homes to rising water levels, and then everything can change for them. America's withdrawal from the IPCC is just another topic that I had to bring up to talk about climate change. It's obviously not the only thing that's affecting climate change or just the only topic to talk about climate change. Basically, on international global climate science, there's obviously, we already have heard of El Nino, which is the gradual rise in temperature in coastal areas where the eastern and southern areas have seen gradual rise in temperatures. And there's the opposite to it, which is El Nina, which means the gradual rise in weather in winter-like areas where winter is most likely to be more severe than the other years. It only happens 2 to 7 years and it lasts for like 9 months to 12 months. Like telling someone this and they're gonna be like, oh, that's too bad. That's not how, I think that's really bad. That's how they're gonna think. And then you're gonna see one person protesting against it, one person talking about it, and then you're gonna think that what is one person talking about a topic like this gonna change about it? But that is what changes. That is how change starts. A chain reaction occurs when the domino effect takes place when one person or anything is initiating at first. If you do not become the person that initiates it, how are people around you going to be affected about it? You have to have the empathy to talk about it. You have to be the one to start talking about, to raise your voice against it. Once you create awareness around you, that's how people are going to be affected to take resistance against it and talk about it. When the person you're talking to only just replies in their words and does not change their actions to actually prevent something like that, that's when you know they're just privileged and they don't care. When someone cares, you just know that when their behavior changes. When you're making someone aware that maybe use less water, maybe consume less, you can be doing anything, even a small action like stop using AI or anything else that just affects the environment in a bad way. Stop consuming so much, because consumerism is already bad enough and you don't need so many things. Maybe start being resourceful. If you tell them that and they don't reciprocate or change, bring behavior patterns in there, then you just know that people just don't care enough. I think one reason is because human beings are naturally focused more on what is immediately in front of them. It's because you have everything. It's because the privileged have everything at their hands. That when if someone is hungry right now, they're probably not going to think about how food will be 50 years later from now on. If someone has a comfortable house, they're not going to think about homeless people, because they're just going to be like, oh, too bad, that person is homeless. But they're not going to do anything to provide or help that person get a home, because they're already comfortable in their own accommodation. You hear about melting glaciers and rising sea levels, and then you go, oh, that's awful, but you don't necessarily feel it. If you feel it enough, then you're going to act upon it. And I think empathy has a huge role in that, because climate change isn't going to affect everyone equally. Because someone living in a wealthy country does not care about the living conditions of someone living in a poorer country. So when you're physically, emotionally distant from those people, it's easy to think of climate change as their problem only, as it does not affect you. But I also think that the attitude of thinking that one person cannot change everything also ruins everything, because it is ridiculous to think that the chain reaction would be triggered without at least one person speaking up. One person has to start everything for the dominant effect to take place. It needs to be triggered in order to be started. A revolution cannot be started with just one person. It needs a voice that speaks up, and then people are affected by it. It's just like advertising. When you see that other people are doing something, you immediately become motivated to do that as well. And technically, obviously, one person isn't going to save the person, but that's not really the point. The point is that when one person speaks up, you are also affected, or at least peer pressured into doing the same, even if it's a bad thing or a good thing. So when it's a good thing, I think the peer pressure is good enough. And I also think it is the mindset that also affects the actions of people. Because when you have the mindset that I'm gonna act like I also care about issues like this, but then not act upon it, then it's not really going to be helpful to the climate change. So when you watch a video on YouTube or like any social media platform, you're going to think, oh, that's awful for a second, scroll to another video, and then another video, and then doom scroll until you lose yourself in this mess of a consumerism. And then you're going to think, oh, I'm actually a really good person because I care and I have empathy, and I think that people deserve to be better. People deserve better housing conditions. People that live in such worse climate conditions deserve better places. The world deserves to be saved. But then you're not doing anything to help it. You're not contributing to it. You just have that mindset that you think you care. It's because you think that just for a second you felt bad, and that's not going to change everything. You need to work upon something to actually prove your empathy. It's not that it's not that because you're bad. It's not because people are actually worse than they appear to be. It's just because people don't have the energy to do so anymore, and that's because AI is just messing with our minds nowadays. And I think people are becoming eventually slower than they used to be. They don't understand, they can't differentiate between real and AI stuff. AI slop has become so normalized that eventually our minds are becoming slower than they used to be. We're becoming less empathetic, and then we're losing our sympathy, we're losing our humanness that humans are supposed to have, that AI is taking over the world. And I think that's not just a funny sentence, that's quite literally the truth. AI is taking over our minds so hard that we cannot differentiate between real and AI stuff. So eventually that's going to mess with our minds a lot, and I think people have lost the ability to think for themselves, to work for themselves, because whenever you handle any, like, just take education as an example. You're told to write an essay. You immediately go to ChatGPT, write me an essay. You're not using your own mind to think. You're giving your ability to AI, and that's slowing your brain down. Like, it's just like doing math. Once you learn something, if you do not practice for 2 days, you're going to forget. And that's just how I think our brains work. Because eventually you're going to lose the ability to think for yourself. You're going to need AI to do the thinking for you. You're going to be unable to be human at some point. We see suffering constantly, and I think it's because we are so exposed to it that we are going numb to it. We keep thinking that, oh, it happens every day, there's nothing to be worried about. This is happening today, it's not going to happen tomorrow, and even if it happens tomorrow, it's not going to affect me, it's not going to affect the people around me. And that's how eventually small problems becomes big enough to affect a lot of people. Like, you're going to see a polar bear losing a house, and then you're going to think that, oh, just because the glacier she made her house on melted, that doesn't mean there aren't any more glaciers in the world. She's obviously going to find, but you need to think why that glacier melted in the first place. Because if that had not melted, then eventually the others are going to melt as well. So you need to think far ahead. And obviously privileged people do not think about other people, and they do not think what the world is going to be like 50 years later. So I don't think there's much to talk about that anyway. Ultimately, the entirety of human beings know that the problems that are happening nowadays, but just don't care enough to work on them. And I think one person making a change and creating a chain reaction or triggering the domino effect is just where everything starts. Maybe one person can fix climate change, but one person is going to make another person realize that this is something that you should not be indifferent to. This does not deserve indifference. This deserves our attention, and this deserves our actions to act upon to make our earth more beautiful and habitable for us, and to prevent climate change from damaging other people's lives any further, and then so that we can fix our beautiful earth and make it just like how it was 50 years ago from now on. Even though the technology wasn't that advanced, I think earth was more beautiful 50 years ago. Ultimately, the science is clear. The impact is visible, and denial should no longer be an option. That's all I have to say today. See you all tomorrow in another vlog. Bye guys.